Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Wednesday again. Well, we just did a 12-hour live stream on this channel, streaming the Rules Committee, as they apparently, quote, filibustered the night into the next day away, talking about a whole lot of nothing, literally talking in circles most of the time. Well, what we were anticipating and hoping to hear was discussion and ultimately a vote on the amendments concerning the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. Well, I do have some breaking news. The Hearing Protection Act, for now, is in the bill. It is in the one big, beautiful bill, the omnibus, the budget reconciliation bill, right? However, if you look at my title, and look, this is like good news, but I hate that it has to be this way, but I think you guys come to this channel just for the truth, and in my opinion, but actually probably not in the end. So again, breaking news. I'm probably going to have to repeat myself a couple times because I just jumped on here and I know what's going to happen. In 5 minutes, people are going to come on and say, what happened? But welcome and glad to have you guys joining me live. So this just came out, 15 minutes ago, something like that. And we do now have an excerpt where, and if you remember last night, I said, look, guys, there's the managers, they're called. In the back room, the managers. I wasn't joking about any of this. And this is breaking from the GOA, the manager's amendment to the one big, beautiful bill, including the Hearing Protection Act, fully removing suppressors, legally silencers, from the National Firearms Act of 1934. Okay, great. And I'm going to read you the text of this amendment momentarily. However, in the end, by the time this is passed into actual law, I doubt it. And it's going to end up being a compromise that might be a little bit better than the previous compromise that we're all frustrated with, but not much better. And at the end of the day, it's not my belief that truly, as a matter of law, when this is all played out, I don't think they'll be removed from the National Firearms Act, but I hope they will. And I hope I'm wrong, and it's going to concern this bird rule in the United States Senate. So let me check to make sure that I'm live and everyone's chiming in. All right, cool. Some people are filtering the chat here. So here's the breaking news. And by the way, just so I can show you here, these guys are still going. Like they never stopped. They just cut off the live feed after 12 hours. And we decided to end the stream on the channel.
Of selected insulin products.
The Senate Rules Committee is still in session. Granny, gotta love her, is still holding the gavel, and she's still wearing that teal and black blazer. You can see her right there. She's literally been up now for almost 24 hours in this hearing. So let's come back over here. So we're looking at two things here. The Short Act so far is not in. So we're still going to be watching that. We'll come back over to this hearing in just a few minutes if you guys want to see some more of it. However, so yes, the great news is the full Hearing Protection Act repealing silencers, otherwise known as suppressors, all right, is amended and it's added into this budget reconciliation package. And I'll read what it says. And there is a but, there's more afterwards. And as of right now, the Short Act, removing short-barreled rifles and shotguns from the NFA, has yet to show its face in this package. All right. So here's the actual amendment, the manager's amendment. It's the management running this more than it is actual duly elected reps in many cases. All right. This is section 112.029, modification of treatment of silencers. Because again, we like to all call them suppressors. Legally speaking, they're called a silencer as a matter of law. And that's because Hiram Maxim's invention, his patent was for a silencer. Just a little piece of trivia for you. That's what it was literally patented as originally. 1909, early 1900s. Okay, A, in general, section 5845A is amended by striking 7, any silencer, and all that follows through, and 8, and inserting and 7. This is literally how it reads. Transfer tax, section 5811A is amended to read as follows. A, rate. There shall be levied, collected, and paid on firearms transferred a tax at the rate of, and then it's a blank, but 0 is what's being reported. 1, $5 for each firearm transferred in the case of a weapon classified as an any other weapon. So it looks like it's not getting rid of the AOW tax. And then it goes on and says 0, section 2, 0 for each firearm transferred in the case of a silencer, as defined in section 921 of Title 18 United States Code, and $200 for any firearm transferred. And then it says making tax is amended. So the other firearm would be like, your machine gun and other types of NFA items, right? Okay. Making tax. That's if you make your own. Section 5821A is amended to read as follows. There shall be levied, collected, and paid upon the making of a firearm a tax at the rate of, now these are NFA firearms, not GCA firearms, two totally different things. $0 for each silencer as defined in section 921 Title 18 United States Code made, and $200 for any other firearm made. D, effective date. The amendments made by this section shall apply to calendar quarters beginning more than 90 days after the date of the enactment of this act. Page 1025, line 11, insert customs, quote, after United States. Page 1026, after line 13, insert the following, and then it's going to go on to other things that are a different section. So what does that mean? It means right now they're removing, as the way it's amended, this amendment in the House reconciliation package, okay? It's going to remove silencers from the National Firearms Act. So good. But here's the rub, though. And this isn't me trying to be a downer. This is just what happened. However, as a backup under the Byrd rule, the transfer and making tax is also reduced from $200 to $0. Now, as you guys know, there's two houses of Congress. The lower chamber is the House of Representatives. The upper chamber is the Senate. All budget bills have to originate in the House. So the original bill has to be written and amended as such in the House. Then it gets sent over to the Senate. The Senate has a special rule called the Byrd Rule. The Byrd Rule is a Senate rule that limits the scope of what can be included in a budget reconciliation bill. It essentially prevents, quote, extraneous provisions, meaning provisions that are not directly related to budget changes, from being included in a reconciliation measure. The rule, named after former Senator Robert Byrd, was created to ensure the reconciliation bills are focused on their intended purpose of implementing budget resolution policies and not used as a vehicle for unrelated legislation. So here's the concern. Here's the concern. We'll have to see what happens. If they're just taking the tax as a matter of $200 per transfer down to $0 per transfer, I think a reasonable person should assume at this point that definitely meets the criteria of the Byrd Rule. And now the senators can still decide whether they want to adopt it or not. They could still have their own vote, and they could turn on the House, and then things could get complicated. They could have to have like a reconciliation of the differences in the bills. But let's just assume the Senate would go along with it, and the Republican majority would stick to their campaign promises that they're pro-Second Amendment. So we do have to assume all that to even continue with the conversation. But I wouldn't just assume that, because you never know what Republicans would do or not do. So with that said, I think no matter what, probably, and you say probably because look, these people make up the rules as they go, right? We've just seen how this works. It's crazy the way government actually works and makes laws. Reducing a $200 tax down to a $0 tax, that pretty much is the epitome of something that would fall under budget reconciliation. I don't think there's any way that would violate the Byrd Rule. However, and this is for the Senate parliamentarians to decide from what I understand, not the actual voting senators. All right. They could say, though, that if you're trying to actually just remove the classification of these firearms, if you try to remove them from the NFA, National Firearms Act, that could go beyond the scope of just merely budget, and that can now go into the scope of, creating new law, or in this case, repealing existing law that is out of that specific scope within the Byrd Rule of strictly being, quote unquote, dollars and cents and line item budgets. Does that make sense? Now, don't for 1 minute say that I agree with the Byrd Rule in this case, or that I think they should. I'm just telling you what's most likely to be what becomes, which is completely contrary to my wishes. And I know some people conflate, like, oh, 2A EDU saying they can neuter this back down. Yes, they can, and I think it's probable they will. That does not mean, though, that's what I want them to do. And just sitting there repeating something you want to hear doesn't necessarily make it true either, right? So that's where I'm at with this right now. So yes, where we are right now, we're trying to get from steps A to step B. Then we try to get from step B to step C, and then there's C to D. So from step A to B, the Hearing Protection Act is in. The real one, the one that's actually going to remove these from the National Firearms Act. The next step, though, to get us from point B to C is the Senate has to agree. The parliamentarian has to decide whether it satisfies the Byrd Rule, okay? And then if it does, then you actually have to get it through the various committees within the Senate. But let me back up. This actually still has to pass the House at large, too. Just because it's been bundled in right now during the Rules Committee hearings, I guess we can't assume that this one big, beautiful bill is even going to make it through the House, right? I kind of am putting the cart, but see, I'm being biased. Like, dude, everyone's biased to a point. I am biased, meaning like this is the only chance in our whole lifetime we have to repeal at least part of the NFA. So I just skipped a step while trying to go it through methodically. It should not be a foregone conclusion that this will even pass the House right now. It probably will, because even if there's some rhino Republicans or some FUDs or whatever, okay, look, there might be other reasons that we're not even thinking of. Remember last night in the 12-hour marathon session, they got in at a certain time talking about this certain specific type of smelt and all of this crazy stuff. Like, it might literally be where there's some guy that his whole passion is we must save this particular brackish water smelt, and they're not saving the smelt enough. They might only be putting $100 million in for it. He wants more homeless people at the expense of putting $500 million in to save this smelt. You guys know what I'm saying, right? So there could be other reasons that have nothing to do with the Second Amendment why this might not pass the House. From what I understand right now, every Democrat's going to vote no. So we'll see. There's going to be a vote later on. We'll see. But I just wanted to back up. So let's assume it passes the House. Goes to the Senate. It has to make it through their parliamentarians, subject to the Byrd Rule. Can it make it through the Byrd Rule? I would like to say yes. I don't know 100% though, because I am hearing, okay, from parliamentarian scholars. It's like, dude, the parliamentarian of the Senate, I thought like we fought the Revolutionary War to get away from Parliament, but we still have a parliamentary aspect of the United States political process. Clearly. I would say, guys, you should still be calling your reps and senators right now, because here's a couple things going on. I'm going to say we just had a big win. Breaking news, big win, that the Hearing Protection Act is in. Representative Cloud of Texas. Give the man a pat on the back. I would say buy him a beer. You probably can't. It might violate some type of emoluments clause or whatever, but, call him up and thank the man. There's some other ones that have been very heavy-handed in this. Representative Clyde, Representative Roy, okay, and others. But as of right now, the Cloud Amendment is in, repealing that section of the National Firearms Act. All right? Awesome. No, I mean, it's good news. Comma, but actually probably not in the end, though. Here's what I think is going to happen if you guys want to know my opinion. And this is my opinion where I hope I'm wrong. I truly do. Like, I will be celebrating. You guys can come in and be like, dude, you were wrong. I'll be like, yes, awesome. Promise you. I think we're going to get the full Hearing Protection Act through the House. I think the Senate's going to find a way to pare it back down to where at the end of the day, it'll be a little less worse, because the previous compromise was, well, it'll take the tax down to $0 if you buy it through the industry, through an FFL, if it's made by an SOT. But if you made it yourself, you were still going to have to pay the $200 tax. But in both instances, it would be registered pursuant to the National Firearms Act, the fingerprints, the delays, the waits, the extra background checks, the notification of your chief law enforcement officer, needing permission slips across state lines, potentially being very easily criminalized if you were to loan your NFA item to a friend, if they weren't in your direct custody. Like, hey, dude, you want to borrow my can and take it out for the weekend? Not giving you guys legal advice, but that would be illegal if he leaves, your direct supervision and no legal advice yet again. So there's just all these things, but the big thing is the registry, putting it on the registry, right? So, but then if you made your own, you were still going to have to pay the $200 tax. Like really nothing changed. It now appears with this new amendment, like basically the real Hearing Protection Act, as I like to call it. It now is going to repeal the $200 tax if you buy it or if you make. Awesome news. I think by the time the Senate's done with it, it's going to be $0 to buy one, $0 to make one, which is slightly less worse than the previous compromise. However, I think it will be subject to all the provisions of the NFA, registered as such, all the other rules I just said. What do you guys think about that synopsis? That's my opinion. But I've been studying this bird rule, and yeah. See, the parliamentarian's kind of a weird thing. This is not an elected office. And the parliamentarian can mess with it. Here's how they can mess with it. Look, the parliamentarian, they're appointed, all this, it's behind the scenes. But here's the thing. They have a layer of anonymity. Okay, they're literally kind of anonymous. You can look them up. But in other words, they can mess with the House version without the senators having to take the rap at the ballot box. And we see this happen in the state of Michigan. We see this happen in national politics. They do like to kind of pass the buck off where, hey, the senators can all throw their hands up and be like, look, dude, I would have voted for the full version. It's not my fault that the parliamentarian said that it didn't follow the bird rule. I would have voted on it, but I couldn't because it didn't make its way to the floor. You guys can already imagine the way they're gonna say this. So it's this sneaky thing. Now, keep in mind, the only reason that we have this amendment, not because it was fiercely debated in the committee, because they basically ignored the Second Amendment for 12 hours straight. They're still going strong. If you guys want, we can tune back into it again for a little bit. But it was the managers that put the amendment in. Now, who are the House managers? Well, that's a whole nother topic that I don't want to bore you with, but it's not exactly like it's the reps that you see there on TV, on broadcast. They're not doing like this formal vote in the public. The managers are slipping stuff in. So you thought you had a representative republic, but really you kind of have that, but you definitely have managers making stuff happen behind the scene. Literally in the back room. I'm not joking. The rooms that are in the back of the chambers. I've been in some of them at the Lansing Capitol. Some of them I'm not allowed to be in. I'm not allowed to get near them. Probably not even supposed to know about them. Washington, D.C. has even more rooms like this. So they're in the back actually making a sausage. You don't want to see how it's made, but they're making it. Then you've got the whole parliamentarian thing with the Senator Byrd rule. Yeah. I mean, this Byrd's a whole beauty. Go look into his whole legacy, if you will. Completely contradictory to what the Democrats say they're for, but they've always been for. So just go look into him. Go look into him in a group that starts with a K and ends in a K. No, I'm not joking. Like, literally. They've named bridges after him. They've named rules after him. This is one of the holy grail heroes of the Democrat Party. Now we have another problem. the Short Act hasn't come up yet. Dude, the clock's ticking right now, man. The Short Act, very, very important. Very important. The Senate can't originate a version of the Short Act into the budget. They can't do it. Now, I know Cruz and another Democrat, via unanimous consent, did go through and quote, pass something, but it doesn't hold up to constitutional scrutiny, and everyone knows it. It was basically a show vote. So, look, they've done some weird stuff lately, but that's not actually, look, anything that's budget for this new omnibus, one big, beautiful bill package or act, whatever it's called. I know it's like the one big, beautiful bill, Trump calls it. It has to originate in the House. So if the Short Act is left off, I don't see how it could legally be introduced in the Senate, unless they introduce it in the Senate, but then it would have to at least come back to the House. Like, you could introduce a bill, right? Sure. So let me backtrack a little bit. It could be technically introduced in the Senate, but the House would have to come back and pass it before it could then be voted on in the Senate, because it literally says in the Constitution itself that the House has, I'll just say collectively, the power of the purse, that budgets must originate in the House. So it could go back and forth, but the House would have to do something with it. It can't just you can't just add the Short Act into the Senate and then the House does nothing with it and it becomes law. I know that for a fact. It would have to do the whole back and forth. Does that make sense? Now, I know I see a bunch of people in the chat saying, no, the Senate's going to do one, the House is going to do the other. Okay. Maybe we're talking past each other with semantics. Look. Anything budgetary, anything tax-wise, okay, has to go through the House. It is legally impossible that the Senate could just add something in after the House votes on it. The House never touches it. So it's hard reading chats while we're, I'm thinking out loud and you guys are just typing brief little things. But trust me on this. The easiest way for the Short Act just to get through, in my opinion, would first be for it to make it into the Rules Committee and just get introduced into the House and then proceed on to the Senate. There is a way that it could be introduced in the Senate, but it still has to go back to the House, okay? The Senate cannot just pass a bill without the other chamber voting on it, signing off on it, whatever you want to call it. And in some cases, they don't even hold full votes on some of it. They'll hold like a reconciliation vote, and that'll be like a subset of the actual people. It actually gets really complicated. It's not that I don't know how it works. It's just like it gets really boring, and we could talk like 2 hours straight on all the technicalities. But here's the skinny of it. The unabridged, good version, I guess you could have gone a little better because some people did want the AOWs completely removed too, and so did I. But if we're only talking just within the Hearing Protection Act itself, big win in the House today. Big win in the House today. Comma, but will it stand up to the Byrd rule? And will it be reduced down to just simply saving people money? No, I'm sure you're right. What's happening? GB says, that is being sent out by other sources. The Senate is going to handle SBRs. I hear what you said, but the messaging coming out is that. No, I know. Look, this is just common messaging. And I've spent so much time behind the scenes just on the state level alone, which mirrors many things with the U.S. Congress. And look, guys, I've been studying this stuff for a long time. No, I'm not a lawyer. And everybody does like the appeal to authority. You have to be a lawyer before you know what you're talking about. You have to be this. You have to be wrong. That's fine. People can choose to believe what they want. I just know that there is no way the Senate can just simply add the Short Act in like after the House and for it not to have to then go back through the House. It's just not physically possible. And if it did happen, if somehow they did like slip that through, dude, that would be blown out of the water within seconds by the Supreme Court. Like that'd be like a unanimous 9-0. If you had anything budgetary that the House didn't approve of in an omnibus budget, it wouldn't last for even half a second. I assure you of that. Okay, so I get it. There's like common messaging. But yeah. So that's where we're at. What do you guys think? So we have, this hearing's still going on literally right now. They're not done yet. And look, their strategy, this is all political strategy and political gamesmanship. There's reasons why they would want senators to be able to get up there and say, look, we introduced the Short Act. We're the ones that got this through, right? So it just has to do with people jostling for rank internally. This guy might be in a close Senate race next term. You know what I mean? He wants to be able to have his name on it versus, well, Representative Cloud, you got the Hearing Protection Act. We're not going to give you the Short Act as well, though, because you're already going to get reelected. Like, that's how a lot of this stuff works. Let's call a spade a spade. At the end of the day, this is them swapping back and forth, seeing how they can trade political capital with each other. What I'm leery of, though, and trust me, I chose my words carefully for the title. It says breaking. The Hearing Protection Act is in. Yes, awesome. But actually probably not in the end. And when I say that, I mean the full unabridged Hearing Protection Act. The one that still keeps it on the NFA. It just reduces the tax to 0. I do not consider that the actual Hearing Protection Act, okay? I don't. I mean, is it a little less worse? Sure. But it's also kind of like, do you guys remember when there was that pistol brace rule where they said you can get a free tax stamp for your braced pistol, even though there wasn't really any legal way they could do it? Hey, I did a video right away saying it's a trap. It's a trap. They're trying to get you on a stamp for something that does not need to be registered on the NFA because it's not an SBR. It's a braced pistol. And later on, as it promulgated through the courts, it was decided as such. And now the Trump administration is removing the rule altogether, or has removed the rule, or in the process thereof, technically, whatever. But I think this also, while it's good news, and some people are going to call it good news, if we end up with a half-baked version, right? Many in the community are going to look at it as this is awesome. And if you want to look at it that way, great. They're going to say, dude, I can go get myself a silencer or make my own. But if all NFA rules still apply, it's kind of that whole free train ride thing. World War II. Hop in for a free train ride. Just keep in mind, for free. Now, for free, it might be better for free to go on the train ride to a death camp than it would be to pay $200 for a ticket for one. Sure. Moving it back to the tax stamps, I guess it's better to pay $0 to get yourself put on a registry where the government knows exactly who and where holds such firearms. I guess it's better to be put on a registry for free than it is to pay $200 to get put on a registry. But it's hard for me to get excited about that because there shouldn't be any registry at all. And to me, the registry is actually worse than the $200. Now, that notwithstanding, the $200 is completely unacceptable and unconstitutional too. Like if we had a $200 poll tax, people would go up in arms and go absolutely berserk. So trust me, that notwithstanding, I do not accept or agree that you should pay $200 or $1 or 1 penny to exercise a constitutionally protected, natural God-given right. However, if I had to choose between the two, I would say the registration provisions, the permission slip provisions, the lacking freedom to freely share your property with other people. All of those parts of the NFA, to me, collectively, are actually much worse than the $200 itself if I were to have to pick. Therefore, getting them off the NFA is the goal. I think the Senate is probably going to invoke the Byrd rule and give us such a watered-down so-called compromise, which I won't be happy with at all. But I said probably, not definitely. I'm not saying no matter what the Senate's going to do it, but I don't know, man. I've seen how these parliamentarians work with stuff like this. Yeah. Okay, so I'll update you guys. Killakamfu OG, what's happening, man? He says, isn't the HPA as it stands up for a full House vote now? No tax off the NFA as originally drafted, more or less. Yes, and that's how I started this stream. And I did read from the amendment, the Representative Cloud Amendment of Texas. But actually, probably, however, the Senate could find a way to neuter this through this Byrd rule. I'll read the Byrd rule one more time because there are some people who have come in since I first started the stream. Here's the Senate Byrd rule. The Byrd rule is a Senate rule that limits the scope of what can be included in a budget reconciliation bill. And that is what this one big beautiful bill is, guys. This is budget reconciliation. This is how they can get it through without having a threat of a Senate filibuster. If they try to pass just, HR 404, which is your Hearing Protection Act, and HR 2395, if they just try to put these up for vote separately, these will never get through. Won't happen. The Democrats will filibuster it, and there will not be 60 senators to come through and prevail and override or break the filibuster. So the only way to get these through is through this budget reconciliation. That's why this matters here. I'll continue. Limits the scope of what can be included in a budget reconciliation bill. It essentially prevents extraneous provisions, meaning provisions that are not directly related to budget changes, from being included in a reconciliation measure. The rule, named after former Senator Robert Byrd, was created to ensure that reconciliation bills are focused on their intended purpose of implementing budget resolution policies and not used as a vehicle for unrelated legislation. So what they could say, and if I were to opine, probably say, and here's where the writing's kind of on the wall, really. It's kind of in plain view. I think the House knows this. Why else would have they put in as a backup under the Byrd rule, the transfer and making tax is also reduced from 200 to 0. See, here's how the amendment was really written, and here's where you have to pay attention. It basically said they were just going to be removed from the NFA and the GCA. That's what I was reading last night for you all. And that was on the official.gov website. You were getting the most accurate information at that time. If you just simply remove it from the NFA, of course, if it's removed from it, all the taxes go away. But somebody in the House, whether it be the representative himself or the House managers who actually added this amendment in, they knew there was a good chance the Senate was going to pull the Byrd rule out, pull it out of their whatever, right? Think about this for a minute. Because now it's been changed, it's been added in, where not only does it repeal them from the NFA, but also, like in the alternative, it also removes the tax from $200 down to 0. And here's what that means. And that means not only am I skeptical the Senate's going to invoke the Byrd rule on this, but clearly the House is skeptical of it, or maybe they know for a fact they're going to do it. I'm sure they know more than me or anybody else doing YouTube videos, right? Because now they've gone into the other section of revenue code and said the tax is reduced from 200 to 0. That means if the provision of repealing it, if they say, nope, that's not a direct dollar and cents bill, that's not pursuant to the Byrd rule, we're going to scrap that and remove it from the Senate bill. The other part of the House amendment, does this make sense now? The other part that was amended is the Hearing Protection Act. That'll still stand on its own 2 feet. And then that's where we get what's considered by many people, the compromise. Well, they didn't get removed from the NFA, but at least the tax got down to 0. And it was worded where in the alternative, the tax would be down to 0 if you bought one, but still 200 if you made it. Now it's a little less worse. The tax would be 0 if you buy one or make a silencer. There's no reason in the world, if they didn't think the Senate, if they didn't think there was at least a chance, if not maybe outright knowing they're going to do it, if they didn't think the Byrd rule was going to come into play, they would not have added that. As GOA words it themselves right on their X account. If you guys want to see the GOA post, go look up 2AEDU on X. I just retweeted it. It says, as a backup under the Byrd rule, the transfer and making tax is also reduced from 200 to 0. Well, usually in life, especially in politics, the only time you make a backup plan is where you're either A, certain your main plan's not going to go through, or you're pretty sure it's going to go through, but you're not 100%. So that's where that's at. Short Act, nowhere to be seen yet. will the House go through and pass all the stuff through without it being mentioned? And then the Senate will bring it up. And then if the Senate can get it through its appropriate committees, remember the Byrd rule will apply and they'll go through and see what they do there with that. And then it would have to go back to the House before it can be sent on to the president. And then the last step, we have to think about it, is president has to sign it. Now, here's the thing. I think Trump will sign it. I do. I think Trump will sign it. That's probably the most foregone conclusion. Once it makes it through all of this, whether the hearing protection is or isn't in it, whether it's the neutered version, the real version, I look at it as like it's either the full one, repealing it, or it's not. I don't like to accept that whole, oh, it's the neutered version. Like, we still win, just not win as much. And no, I don't. I don't know. Do you guys think I'm just being too negative, or do you agree with me? Tell me what you think. I ain't going to consider it a win if they still stay on the NFA and they just remove the $200. I mean, is it a compromise? Sure, but here's the thing. I'm pretty hard-nosed with the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed is no compromise. No compromise. So as soon as there's a compromise, like, well, you can have this, but... And here's the thing, man. Once they take the tax down to zero, once they take it down to zero, guys, we ain't ever getting rid of it at all. See, you think I'm being too negative. Okay, fine. Fair enough. I think you're being naive, though. And that's the fair counter to what you just said. Because here's the thing. This is a generational battle. No, it's actually not a generational battle. Did you know that? It's actually not. No, like you're literally wrong. 1934 to 2025, that's 91 years, dude. This is not a generational battle. This has been going on for 100 years. If we get a win, we're going to change culture. It's not a win if they reduce the tax, and it means they'll never be able to get rid of it again. You know why? Because the only time you can stop the filibuster. Look, this is how this works. The only time you can stop that Senate filibuster for purposes of this is through a budget reconciliation bill. If they take the tax down to zero, how the heck can it end up in a tax reconciliation bill? Think about it. It'll be a moot point. Right now, we're hoping it all stays tied together. Like, because it's a tax, we're going to remove the tax. All right? We're going to remove the tax. You got me? And also remove it from the NFA. Now, that's budget related. If we get it where just the tax is removed, but the NFA provisions stand, how can it ever be? How can it ever be repealed under reconciliation again? Because if there's a $0 tax, that doesn't affect the budget. You see what I'm saying? Now, they could go on and add a tax later and put that through a reconciliation bill. Sure. Like they could reinsert later if there was the political will and add the $200 tax back. Right? I'm just saying. All right. I tried to be nice. All right. Get that guy out of there. What's happening, Christy Turtel? How you doing? She says, oh my goodness, long time no see. Watching you from Roanoke, Virginia using Starlink. You're an absolute legend, brother. Well, thank you, Christy. I hope you're doing good. Well, you tell me, as someone that knows Trump better than me, Trump will sign it, right? That's the part. We have to worry about what the Senate's going to do behind the scenes with the parliamentarian. But if this full Hearing Protection Act makes it through the Senate, tell us, Christy. We want your forecast here. Trump will sign it, right? Trump will sign it. CT. Yeah, man. I hope I'm wrong, dude. But that's what I'm saying, though, right? He says, I agree with you. They are adding the HPA to shut us up about the Short Act, and they know the Senate will do the rest of the screwing on the HPA. That's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about. Guys, here's the thing everybody's forgetting right now. Think about this. Everyone's like, call your congressman, call your senator. Yes. Everyone needs to be calling the White House like crazy. Call Trump. Yeah, you won't speak to Trump actual and you won't speak to your senator actual, but no, call Trump. Call the White House. Trump has the largest bully pulpit right now in all of DC. All right. Trump is not a lame duck president right now. Trump is in play like nobody's ever been in play before. Trust me. I mean, if we can bring this to Trump's attention more, just keep this in mind. Has Trump done things against the Second Amendment in the past? Yes. Does it seem like he's kind of figured out some of this stuff and corrected himself in the last, between 45, some of the things he did versus 47? Dude, Trump 47 is like a lot better on the Second Amendment than Trump 45. Like, not even close so far, okay? Look, when we called him out on stuff he's done on the past on this channel, we had to. But we have to call a spade a spade. Trump has drastically veered towards the Second Amendment from where he was at just, 7 years ago or whatever, right? With that said, if we get it in Trump's ear that, no, this is a bunch of BS, we don't want some half-baked, cucked version of the HPA, Trump starts putting pressure on GOP senators. So I think if you guys are making your calls, you should be calling Trump as well. What do you think? Hey, here's the problem. Somebody screws up, you call them out when they screw up. But you call them out hoping that it'll get their attention and that they'll do better. And that's the dynamics with Trump. When he did the bump stock ban, when he called for the red flag laws, yeah, he screwed up big time. A lot of people called him out. But keep in mind, man, like we live and breathe the 2A. This guy's from New York. I don't think he grew up with like 500 guns in his house or whatever, like some of you might have. But here's the smart thing about Trump. Trump knows smart people. He knows 2A people. And that's all I was hoping the whole time is the right person would talk to him, open his eyes up to some things he might not have thought about. And it appears, as of now, maybe that's happened. So if you want, I think calling the White House would be appropriate right now. Because although Trump does not have a vote, J.D. Vance could potentially have a vote. Call him too. J.D. Vance could vote on this budget if it's a tie. Kamala did in the last term, if you remember. So Vance, yes, he could be in play. Trump, he can't vote on this at all. But he has the ultimate vote where he can either sign it or veto it. But that's besides the point. He can put pressure on these politicians right now. I'm telling you, dude, if there was a Republican senator right now that was a little wishy-washy on the Hearing Protection Act, and he got a call from Trump or Trump's chief of staff or from whoever Trump would assign to that phone call. For a senator, that might actually warrant a personal call from POTUS himself. It probably would, actually. Senators, not on every issue, but on important issues, the president will literally talk to the senator directly. If it's a lesser person, on the political hierarchy, the president will delegate it off to one of their staff making the call on his behalf. But in this case, one of the president's staff will link the phone call up with one of the senator's staff, and then when it's time to talk, you get POTUS on the phone directly in the ear of a Republican senator and says, I want the real Hearing Protection Act in, none of this BS, get it done. You know what I'm saying, right? So call him too. Call him too. And most people have been leaving that out. I know this is a small channel and I'm not an influencer, and all the influencers are telling you guys, call your congressman, call your congressman, call your representative. Yeah, your senator, but don't forget, call the president right now. Collectively, if we can get their ear, he's a lot more powerful than we are as far as one phone call. There you go, Christy. You need to lobby high-profile senators behind the scenes to apply pressure in these types of situations. Absolutely. That's how it works on the state level, too. And look, man, that's a different perspective I offer on this channel a little bit. Like, I know I've had some people tell me in this chat already, like, dude, the messaging is this. They're saying this. I know. And clearly, dude, all these big channels that are way bigger than mine, they're obviously, like, way better at it than me, clearly. Because look how many more subscribers they have. But I think more than most, if not almost all, I've spent a lot of time like intrinsically behind the scenes on this, particularly at the state level. And I've literally watched how it works. I've been on the phone more times than I can count with lawmakers on the weekends, within minutes before they're going to make a vote. 2 a.m. I was talking to legal counsel as well as a legislator on a federal holiday at like 9 p.m. one time about this stuff. Like, so just keep in mind, man, and I'm trying to share this with you guys. I'm not bragging. It's actually a curse. I should have been out having fun with my friends or making more money cutting grass. But when I tell you guys, I know how this stuff works. I intrinsically know how it works. It's a big game. It's a big party. You ain't invited, but here's where we do have a little bit of the representative republic left. If you can push the public opinion. Look, these guys want to get reelected. They want power. That's what they truly want in almost all cases. Some of them just want to make a difference. But generally speaking, most of them want power. That's what actually moves things. And I've literally talked to lawmakers. This is on the state level yet again. I know a couple people from Congress, but not a lot. Okay? No, I don't. I'm not a lobbyist. Keep that in mind. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm just a landscaper that's passionate. I've literally talked to legislators on the state level, but this is still applicable that are like, yeah, man, I was thinking about voting no on this bill, but I had 10 people call me in the last week and want me to support it, man. What do you think? And then I get on here and I'm like, guys, you need to be calling because the other side is and you're not. You know, a Michigan representative represents 90,000 people. They could be set on their vote, and if 10 people call them, they start to get just like, whoa, I don't know. I'm this way. Not all of them, okay? But most of them, they're like this in the wind, back and forth. Now, it takes more than 10 to get a United States Senator's opinion, but it's still the same principle. You guys know what I'm saying, right? It's still the same principle. You've got the media industrial complex. You've got the lobbyists. You've got the NGOs, the non-government organizations. It's all stacked against us. However, at the end of the day, Trump's a populist. All right? Trump's a populist, period. You look through, Trump decides, he becomes aware of, this is the populist movement right now. He's got one of the right people in his corner. Maybe it's Don Jr. His name comes up a lot. It could absolutely be Don Jr. Don Jr. is like, hey, Dad, look at this. This is BS. Did you know that the FBI statistics say more people are killed with hands and feet each year than they are all rifles, let alone what they call short-barreled rifles? And Trump's that type of thinker where he's like, is that so? All right. Yeah. All right. I don't like those being on the NFA. Let's get rid of them. Good point. I mean, that's how stuff can work. All right, let me take a look at the chat here. It's so weird, man, because like we can never ever forget the Constitution, and that's the main thing I like to talk about on this channel. Constitution as amended the first 10 times, the Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence. Like, dude, I love all of it. It's a model of what a great country could be again, hopefully. But at the end of the day, it comes down to like popularity contests. It comes down to who's getting bribed the most behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, the bribery is very important. And you might want to say, I call it bribery, you know, but lobbying, wink, wink, money laundering from the government to the NGO, from the NGO back to the government. No foreign interference in elections. So they'll create the American-Israeli pact and just all these different, look, they're from many countries. They make the United States version, and then Canada's dumping money into it, but only into this. But now it's American money because it's been washed, and then it can be. I mean, this stuff's so corrupt. So yeah, the money's the big thing. The only thing though that kind of actually still trumps money a little bit is being popular and getting the votes and actually like winning the re-elections. That's the crazy part of all of this, and it has little to nothing to do with, in many cases, the Constitution itself. Some reps are different occasionally. Some senators are different occasionally. But at the end of the day, dude, these people a lot of times are already starting to drum up campaign support while they're at their victory party. You think I'm joking? Now, I was at Michigan State Representative Jamie Thompson's election watch party, and when we found out it was imminent that she won, we celebrated and hung out. Nothing was even mentioned about the next election. She's not really a politician type, though. Dude, I've been to other people's watch parties, and tell me if you guys have been to these and know what I'm talking about, where they literally, it's announced they're the winner, and they're on the phone within 30 seconds talking to big money donors. It's like, wait a minute. Are you thanking your donors? Oh, yeah. They're thanking their donors for helping them win this last one, but they're already soliciting donations for the next election. It's like, dude, you haven't been even sworn in under the next session yet, right? You literally just won 10 minutes ago. It's still going to be another couple months till you get sworn in under the new session. And they're literally like, congratulations, you won. Oh, ding, 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 donor. All right. What can we get going for my next election? These people are already seeking re-election before they've even won the election they're in. Don't believe me? Talk to someone that knows how it works on the state or federal level with the House of Representatives. In most cases, not all. But I'll tell you what, the ones that aren't immediately soliciting donors within 10 seconds of winning this election, those are the ones that probably are actually knocking the most doors and going to the most community functions. People that have prioritized. If I just get to know enough people in my community, I can overpower the big money. And on the state level, you can do that. On the federal level, boy, is it tough. Boy, is that tough. All right. Enough of that. I just like to talk about some of the stuff that other people don't talk about because it's all put into perspective here. And everything I just got done saying has everything to do with the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. Sprotsford, channel member, and a $20 super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude. He says, hey, it's St. V. Nice to see you, man. He says, good stuff here, 2A EDU. Hope everything has been good on your end. God bless. Well, it was a rain day today, and I did sleep most of the day because I was up streaming all night last night till 9 in the morning. But I'm going to have to catch up on lawns tomorrow. So, yeah. Christy says, Alex, that's the way the media shapes his public image. When my dad died on Christmas, I had a hard R. He called the day after the funeral. He's been really helpful lobbying senators behind the scenes. Man, what a tragedy. I'm sorry to hear that, Christy. Wow. But yeah, that basically does confirm what I just said. Trump is very influential with senators behind the scenes. She says, Alex, of course, you need to run for office. Actually says you need to run for office. Are you talking about Alex? Well, I wish Alex the best if he runs. What's happening, Threaded for my pleasure? How you doing, man? Thank you for being a channel member. He says, I've been following you carefully for over 6 years. Man, it has been that long, hasn't it? You've always called it before it happens, right on the money. Thank you for what turns out to be the most exclusive 2A info on the internet. Well, thanks, man. Thank you. And you've heard me say this so many times. I hope I'm wrong on this. I hope I'm wrong on this. I think they put in that alternative for the, I think they're going to put in, I think they put in that alternative tax because they're worried about the Byrd rule in the Senate. Now, if you guys want to know my opinion, though, here's the thing. Fully repealing, all right? Because here's the thing. It only has any teeth because it was as a tax. That's always been the premise of the NFA. Because here's the crazy part. You don't become a felon and do a decade in prison and a couple $100,000 in fines for possessing an NFA item illegally. You actually get in trouble for not paying the tax. Just keep that in mind. If you didn't pay a $200 speeding ticket, would you go to prison for 10 years? Think about that and have a $100,000 fine? Of course not. This is totally ridiculous. What about a $5 AOW tax stamp? Have you ever heard of? Think about this. You racked up $5 in library fines. $5. You're going to prison because you didn't pay a $5 tax if you own an unregistered and non-taxed any other weapon. A heavy felony for not paying a $5 or, depending, $200 tax. That's crazy. I think since it gets all the criminal penalties pursuant to the National Firearms Act are under the evasion or non-payment of a tax, I think, in my opinion, even with the Byrd rule, which I don't Dude, it's the Constitution, not the Bird rule. The Second Amendment should always trump any rule. Period. End of story. But yet here we are. I think actually completely repealing this from the NFA completely conforms to the Bird rule. So don't make any mistake in what I said tonight, guys. I believe the Hearing Protection Act that has been inserted into the House reconciliation package, that's the breaking news. I believe that it does conform to the Bird rule, and it ought to pass the Senate. We shouldn't have to be here at all right now, because shall not be infringed means all gun control is unconstitutional. Yet here we are. Dude, I totally believe, if you just wanted my personal opinion, in other words, if I was the Senate parliamentarian, I would say this does conform to the Bird rule. So there you go. That's my answer. It does conform. But in my opinion, though, I don't know if the Senate will see it the same way. I have a feeling the Senate is going to say, well, actually, no. We will adopt the reducing the two different taxes, the acquiring through, we'll just say through the industry, meaning you buy it from an FFL, or if you make, I think they will reduce both of those $200 tax stamps to zero, but still keep it on the NFA. That's what I believe they're going to do. Jared Bear Tactical, what's happening, man? How you doing? Nice to see you. He says, your channel is so underrated and sub too. Well, thanks for the compliment, man. No, I haven't really been gaining many subs on this channel in a long time. And I don't know. I've been pissing people off in the chat tonight here and there, it appears, by some of the stuff people have been saying. But I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing, you know? Like, I think what people like about me is I'll just tell you how I see it. And that's also what a lot of people hate about me. Really. A lot of people need like that certain, like, they need like the ultimate fear mongering, or they need like the ultimate hugs and cuddles. I think that's where I go wrong if I was trying to get to be popular. I don't really like, I don't do clickbait in a breaking 9-0 Supreme Court decision like this one YouTuber does for every video. And it's like the most clickbait you ever seen. I don't do that. So I'm not that sensational. But I also don't sit there and do the rah, sis, boom, bah, like I'm a 7th grade cheerleader and cuddle and snuggle people as much as they need either. I'm kind of like, hey, man, here's what it is. Now, I'm as passionate as anybody. Probably more passionate than most, really. But I don't know. Like, it's like, look, guys, awesome. Breaking news. The HPA Hearing Protection Act is in. Yes, it is. That's 100% true. It is in the House bill. And that's awesome, because if it's not in the House bill, that means it probably ain't going nowhere. So that's great. But actually, probably not in the end. That's my opinion of what's going to happen, and I hope I'm wrong. And look, guys, if the actual real version of the HPA, meaning it's removed from the NFA, and or it can be both or either the real version of the Short Act, because like I've said 10 times now tonight, if they just reduce the tax down to zero, but keep it registered with all the other provisions of the NFA, that doesn't count as the Hearing Protection Act going through. That's something totally different. It can have whatever name it wants if it's still on the NFA. But look, if it gets removed from the NFA, either or, silencers or SBRs and SBSs, I will. It's sitting right here. I will dye my hair white next stream after it happens with this. And I kept on saying last night, I'm going to look just like her. Well, I'm not going to look like her, but my hair will. And it might not even look that right good. But, you know, no. Somebody asked earlier, and you're going to paint your hair white. Yeah, dude. Dude, like, removing stuff from the NFA, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I'm afraid, though, if they just reduce the tax to zero and keep it on the NFA, it'll never be germane to budget reconciliation again. It'll actually be screwing us worse in the long run. And I believe it'll be a trap to try to get tons of people to line up and put themselves on a registry. And what have we always said on this channel? Registration always has, and in my opinion, always will eventually lead to confiscation. I believe when you register something, you're signing up where it's going to be confiscated. And look, I'm not a hypocrite. I live in a state with a pistol registry. I have things registered with the state of Michigan, and I hate it, and I can't stand it. And on some days, I kind of, in a way, like, I'm not a depressed person. I'm actually very happy with my life. But in a certain sense, I actually get disgusted with myself some days. I wake up and I'm like, I have pistols registered with the government in Michigan. Yeah. Yeah. I get pissed off sometimes because I paid for and took the class for a CPL. You shouldn't need a CPL. And only a sucker would pay money for a CPL and pay money for a permit. And what kind of idiot would do that? Yeah, I did that. You know, so trust me, guys, I get it. But this is all very, very conflicting. I purchased a CPL. And in some ways, I guess I'm happy I did, because I can carry a gun wherever I go in my vehicle. Because in Michigan, just having a loaded firearm in your vehicle at all is considered concealing it. In some states, no. In some states, you have so-called constitutional carry. I just said, well, if I'm going to carry a pistol on me, I don't want to go to prison if I get pulled over in a state where you have a duty to notify the police officer immediately. And if you can't tell by my voice, I'm getting really annoyed at myself because I probably comply with this stuff too much, you know? Old and slow. So-and-so was live with the headline breaking news. Okay. Well, that's the headline of this channel, man. And we've been talking about it now for over an hour. So shout out to my friend John Crump. That's not the point. He's a good friend of mine. And I'm just saying, like, okay, and someone else's video said such and such. Yeah, my video says the same thing. And I've talked about it. It's just funny, man. I get a lot of comments where it's like, 2A EDU, did you know, according to such and such, this just happened? I'm like, actually, yeah, because it's a video I'm doing right now and stuff. That's all right, man. I love you. No hard feelings. It's just, yeah, I think I know about it because I'm streaming about it right now. You guys know what I mean? Christopher Reed with a $5 super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Says suppressors are completely off the NFA. Trump just has to sign it. You just have to do a 4473. So if that's the case, hold on, that would mean it's a GCA item if you have to do a 4473. The amendment that was out last night that I was reporting on, and keep in mind, guys, that was accurate information as I had it. It's been changed since then. This stuff changes very quickly. They were going to remove them from the NFA and GCA both and just treat them as firearms accessories. For those who were watching last night, you guys remember when I was literally reading it word for word. I hope you're right, man. I'm not sure, though. Are you sure about that? That they're already off and Trump has to sign it? Because here's the problem. For a bill to become a law, it has to go through the House and Senate, and then it can be presented to Trump, right? And although I've been streaming for over an hour, I know it's probably impossible, right? For this House bill that I don't even think's been voted on as of yet. Maybe that'll be happening any minute now. I don't know that the House has even passed the bill yet. So I appreciate the super chat. However, I don't think we're that far down the road yet, man. And hopefully we will be. Hopefully we will be. But yeah, it doesn't really happen like that, unfortunately. Okay. And that's what I was talking about earlier. It has to go through the House and then the House committees, right? And then the House at large, the whole House floor vote. And then it's going to have to go to the Senate. The parliamentarian gets to look at it pursuant to the Byrd rule. Then there's going to be your various committee or committees, plural, through the Senate. And yeah, right? Well, here's the thing. Removing it from the NFA just makes it more likely to comply with the Senate Byrd rule. No, removing it from the NFA is like removing it from the NFA, reducing the tax from 200 down to 0. That's what makes it pursuant to the Byrd rule, okay? Which I read the Byrd rule like 4 times now. All right. So removing it down to 0 because the Byrd rule says The Byrd Rule is a Senate rule that limits the scope of what can be included in a budget reconciliation bill. It essentially prevents extraneous provisions, meaning provisions that are not directly related to budget changes, so dollars and cents, right, from being included in a reconciliation measure. The rule, named after former Senator Robert Byrd, was created to ensure that reconciliation bills are focused on their intended purpose of implementing budget resolution policies and not used as a vehicle for unrelated legislation. So, now that's cool, man. You might have gotten it backwards, right? Because like removing it of the NFA, that's the essence of the bill. That's what we, the 2A people, want, right? The removing the tax, that's the part that would make it more likely to conform to the Byrd Rule, therefore putting it under that narrow scope of budget reconciliation, therefore a simple majority, it's called, 51 vote threshold instead of the 60 vote threshold to invoke cloture is what it's called on a bill, to invoke cloture of debate. So senators can debate. They can either debate it the old-fashioned way and stand up for an extremely long period of time, refuse to yield the floor. They can't have help of aides. They can't lean. They can't have help from others. There's some specific rules with it, right? And they can do it that way. The old-fashioned knockdown, drag out, Strom Thurmond, stand with Rand. Remember the whole Rand Paul thing? Or they can just literally, as kind of a procedural thing, say, we filibuster. And then it'll be like, all right, we refuse to end debate is what it technically means. And then they have to say, all right, well, now to invoke cloture, meaning end debate, you now have to have 60 votes in the Senate to override that. It's a procedural move, and it's actually a good Senate move. It really is. Now, we're mad it exists when we're trying to ram through something like this, which should have never been a law to begin with, of course. But if you look at everything on the whole scope of the country, that notwithstanding the NFA should have never even been law to begin with. Not in America, obviously. But no, the Senate, I do think the filibuster is an awesome thing, actually, because we don't want laws to pass very quickly. That's not a good thing generally. Look, if we never passed this NFA under the FDR administration, we wouldn't even be talking about this right now. Right? Now, as I've said earlier, okay, Brandon, in my opinion, I think it should get past the Byrd Rule. I really do, but I have to be honest with you all. I have some implicit bias, whether I want to admit it or not. I'm biased. I'm a Second Amendment supporter, man. I just read the Second Amendment. It says shall not be infringed. So if there is a way where it could suffice with the Byrd Rule, I'm going to choose that route, right? Now, knowing how these people do stuff, though, right? You know what I mean? Knowing how stuff just actually is nowadays. That's why I said probably the Senate will neuter it under the Byrd Rule. But I did say probably. I want to be very clear with you all. I'm not saying no matter what. I'm not saying, and I guarantee it. All right? No. Probably. And some people want my opinion and some don't, right? So don't. I try to be very clear on this channel. When I say probably, I say probably. When I say inevitably or this is imminent or it's going to happen, then I mean that too. Yeah, laws should be debated and they should be held up, actually. And yes, guys, we have come a long way. Yes, Brian, we've come a long way in the last couple of years. We're talking about whether or not we can have suppressors on our guns instead of whether or not to ban AR. Yes. I'm not being black-pilled right now. Sometimes I kind of wish I was more black-pilled. Probably sleep easier at night, but I'm not really. That's not it at all. This is cool that it's actually gotten to the level where this is being debated. I just hope that we haven't been put through so much crap under Biden. Look, with bump stocks and other things under Trump, Obama. I mean, it goes back to Reagan. Because if you remember, these amendments to the NFA, they're amending the 1986 version of the NFA. The last time we got really screwed with more NFA crap, besides the Biden rules, but I'm saying under actual law and Trump rules with bump stocks and all this, but was 86 under Reagan. the machine gun ban unless it was grandfathered in before May 19th of 1986. So yeah, man, like, no, this is good. Like, this is our only chance we've had in our whole life. To remove something from the NFA. It's exciting times. Obviously, that's why I streamed for 12 hours straight, starting last night all the way into noontime today. We were streaming. I had to fall asleep. My wife and moderator Mateo helped me finish it out. I just had to crash, you know. But clearly I'm passionate about it, right? And I'm very optimistic. But I hope that we haven't been getting treated so badly for so long that they can give us something that's still screwing us and we get happy about it. Like, don't piss on me and tell me it's raining and now I'm happy either. And it's a fine line between the two, isn't it? I think so. I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I think Trump will sign it with it in there. I really do. Okay, let me see here. Christopher Reed, as a follow-up, says Crump said it already went through. I don't know, man. What did he say it went through, though? Like, I mean, went through what? Like, I don't know, man. Like, you're invoking somebody else's name, and I don't want to argue with Crump because he's not here, but like maybe just he said something a little wrong, or maybe you heard it wrong. I don't know, man. I ain't trying to start a fight with you either. I just know, like, it's impossible. It's impossible that the Hearing Protection Act right now is to the point where Trump just needs to sign it. It literally, that can't be true, right? It's hard because so like, I don't want to argue with you, my man, but I don't want to argue with my friend Crump either, though. Like, it's not like that. But at the same time, like, that just can't be true, though. Like, physically, literally impossible that could be true. That right this minute, the Hearing Protection Act is ready for Trump to sign it. You know what I'm saying? And I mean that with all due respect, dude. Like, now, me and Crump may have different takes on this, and I have not had a chance to watch his video you're referring to. Maybe he's in my chat right now. Maybe he's not watching mine. Maybe, look, we're friends, but we don't have time to watch all of our videos. Like, we have each other's phone numbers, and we talk on the phone and stuff. Like, so that's what I mean by, like, my friend Crump. But I don't know what his take is right now on this, and that's fine. And regardless of what his take is on all this, we're still friends, you know? So, no, it's cool, man. You understand. It's cool, Christopher Reed. Like, I don't know. Sometimes people say something and it's a little different than, you know what I mean. But no, Crump might be telling everybody right now that dude, like, this is going to go through. It's going to pass the Bird rule. We're going to get the full thing in the end. I don't know if he's saying that or not. I have no idea. I just noticed, though, like, the devil's in the details, right? I'm going to show you guys how this is worded. Okay, so they're voting tonight. The hearing did literally end. Let's see here. The hearing ended like just a few minutes ago. I had it up in the background when we started. So they finally ended the Rules Committee hearing. That means a House floor vote is imminent. Maybe some of you, it's hard to multitask when you're like hosting the stream by yourself like this. Maybe some of you are going to tell me they're on the House floor right now, right? But from what I understand, the Short Act is not in right now. It's not in. You know what I think we're here? Let me sum it up real quick. Here's what I think is going to happen. Not what I want to happen, but what I think is going to happen. Probably. We're probably going to get a Hearing Protection Act where it takes the tax down to $0 for transferring it as well as making it. All right. But still pursuant to all the rest. And then we'll probably get a version of the Short Act from the Senate back to the House, back over. Maybe there's a reconciliation period. Trump will sign it. And we'll have a Short Act that will also reduce the tax down to $0 for short-barreled rifles. Shotguns, though, I'm 50-50 on. They might leave shotguns out of it, though, because there's this weird thing. Go back to the United States v. Miller, Supreme Court decision, 1939. That was an SBS. For whatever reason, short-barreled shotguns have always been considered more taboo than rifles. I know. I'm just saying, though, this is how people think, right? So I think it's going to be the short act version that will actually get signed into law will be zero tax for SBRs, but they'll still be on the NFA and pursuant to all of its other draconian BS. And then I could kind of waver on the SBSs. Either they'll be removed from it altogether, or maybe they will go back down to just a $0 tax stamp. I think probably that's what's going to happen. We'll see the $200 tax from either 3 or 4 categories be removed down to 0, but it stays on the NFA. Does that make sense? I know that was kind of weird because I'm like, all right, so there's this subcategory. So you have to look at the Hearing Protection Act here, then the so-called Short Act there. But even within the Short Act, I think there is a chance they'll treat shotguns and rifles differently, just because that's kind of always the way they've kind of looked at it. Because you look at Miller in 1939, they said if it had been a military arm, think about that. Because basically a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And Miller said, well, look, if it's an arm that can be used by them for military purposes, it is protected under the Second Amendment. So they scrutinized the facts of the case. Miller, being a very poor plaintiff, wasn't able to even appear in court for the whole proceedings. But look, so it was a situation that wasn't good in many ways. But here was the problem. They said, if we could find that a short-barreled shotgun served military purpose and was used by a military, we would find that probably the whole NFA, quite frankly, or at the very least the short-barreled shotgun provision, but actually the whole NFA could have been overruled in 1939, 5 years after it was signed into law. But they said finding no militaries using short-barreled shotguns, it does not serve military purpose. It's not protected by the Second Amendment. Now you fast forward to Heller. Heller said, no, the Second Amendment is not connected to any militia or military service. It's an individual right. However, Scalia did throw a poison pill in there and said, unless it was extraordinarily dangerous and, not or, but and unusual. If it was extra dangerous and also unusual, then it's also not protected under the Second Amendment. So we've had a couple caveats in these Supreme Court cases, right? Now, the Bruin decision says we have to go back to the laws of the finding, but it also made it pretty clear that this is not be construed to cancel out Heller. It is to strengthen Heller. So we are still under, right now, according to the Supreme Court, which I'd like to be according to just what the plain text of the 2A says to make myself perfectly clear right now. According to the Supreme Court, they say, well, we are still under the extraordinarily dangerous and unusual, caveat to the 2A. And but besides all that, I wanted to give you guys some legal background. There is just this kind of parlance on the street where, like, the SBS is considered a little more taboo. I don't know why. It's just always kind of been that way. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. Stop your weak language. We need to get together and push it through. Well, first of all, that's not good chat adequate, so bye-bye. But here's the thing. It's just crazy, man. You guys know what I'm saying by now. I've got one person ranting at me, probably as we speak, saying, oh my gosh, this guy's too negative. He's not giving us roses and puppies enough. And then there's someone else literally screaming at me. That's what all caps mean in the chat as we speak. Stop being so weak. Well, I mean, okay. Okay. I don't meet your purity test. Whoop-de-doo. Whatever. It's just so weird, man, how this stuff works. Yeah, dude, it is. You're right. You're right, Zen Zinger. SBS being taboo's Hollywood. Yes, man. Just like Christy said earlier, she said, it's the media, the way they portray it all. You're nail it, man. It's always the bad guy with a shorty shotty blowing someone across the room. You know it. You know it. And there's so many, like, just simple-minded people out there that just say, they look at some movie scene and they're instantly just like, man, Look at what that did. It's just like we got rumors that you shoot a guy with a 45 in his pinky toe, and it not only kills him, but takes its soul. Look, man, I'm a big fan of the 45 ACP, you know? I mean, look, I literally have one sitting right here, okay? I like me some 45 ACP. Is it my favorite caliber? No, not even my favorite, but dude, I like. Come on, man. You don't shoot someone in the toe with this and it takes their soul and their 5 generations after soul, but there's people that don't really understand how guns work that like they literally think like you shoot someone in the pinky with a 45, their body just goes flying across the room. And the short-barreled shotgun is the epitome of that. Yeah. The crazy thing is 1986, the Hughes Amendment. Yeah, but what did the Hughes Amendment amend? That's the crazy part, right, Kevin? Nice cap, by the way. It amended the Firearms Owners Protection Act. See, this is the epitome of what I've been getting at all night, guys, right? Reagan signs the Firearms Owners Protection Act. It's a huge win for the 2A, but actually not in the end, because it removes the capability of adding any more machine guns to the registry. That notwithstanding, the registry was unconstitutional to begin with. But before May 19th of 86, you could buy a new MAC-10, Ingram, whatever, and buy it for your $600 and throw it on the registry for $200. After that date, you couldn't anymore. Special occupational taxpayers could make them. People with a SOT, who are an SOT, with certain classifications of FFLs, and they do vary depending on your intended purpose. But yeah, man, it got narrowed down to where they could just make them for the industry, for law enforcement, for military, for demo purposes. You hear stuff about it's a demo with a law letter, all of this kind of stuff. But for the most part, if you're just a regular person, you're not paying a special occupational tax, and you don't have a law letter in many cases, yeah, man, you have to buy something that was registered like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. What do you mean 30 years ago? 40 years ago. Registered 40 years ago, right? So it was the Hughes Amendment to the Firearms Owners Protection Act. I hope this isn't like the Hearing Protection Act, but it still keeps it on the NFA, and it's actually like a trap, because all these people flock to their free tax stamp, their free registration. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's less worse, though, you might say. One might say, right? Then, well, I got to pay $200 to get it registered now. David Inc. Yeah, I agree. We do not have to worry about a filibuster. Not at all. That's what I was very clear tonight. If it goes through budget reconciliation in the Senate, it cannot be filibustered. I actually literally intrinsically explain exactly how it works. They make a motion to invoke cloture on debate. And that's not going to be at play here. There's not going to be a filibuster and a budget reconciliation. Not whatsoever. However, there's this so-called Byrd rule in the Senate. You know what I mean? So, yeah. No, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Nothing's passed, though, in the law, right? Well, originally they were after pistols. They wanted to put pistols in the NFA. But that wasn't going to pass popular muster back then. It was originally like any concealable firearm, period. And just remember, when you look up the legal definition of a pistol, it's a firearm that's designed and intended to be fired with one hand. Think about that for a minute. All the people with their, I don't know, Taurus G2C, Glock 19. The way most people are trained and prefer to shoot in almost all instances is with two hands. Technically, that doesn't meet the legal definition of pistol. I'm not even joking. Go literally read the law itself. It literally makes it crystal clear to be fired with one hand. Now, that's where they have the rule where if you put a vertical foregrip, now that makes it where the weapon's now designed and intended to be fired with two hands. So if you have a pistol with a vertical foregrip, that would get swallowed up in somewhat of a catch-all portion of the NFA and any other weapon. $5 tax stamp, but still registered pursuant to all of the other provisions and gun control aspects of the NFA, right? So yeah, it's for it to be a rifle, it has to be intended to be fired from the shoulder. Notice that's where kind of that AOW thing can come into place, because yeah, a pistol with a vertical foregrip. Clearly, it's no longer intended. This is according to the law, not my. I don't think any of this should exist. One more time, we shouldn't even be talking about it, but it clearly can't be intended to be fired with one hand anymore. Now that you have a second place for the second hand to go, all right. So it's not a pistol, they say. Well, then what is it? Is it a short-barreled rifle? Let's assume it has a rifled bore. Maybe, but then you get to the definition of rifle, and definitely not, because it's not designed and intended to be fired from the shoulder because there's no stock on it. So they'd say, well, that's an AOW. Just take your Glock 19, back to that again. Pick a tinny rail on the bottom, put a vertical foregrip on there. You've made an AOW, $5, but you have to also register it pursuant and comply with all the provisions of the National Firearm Act. And they can take the tax stamp down to 0 on this stuff, but if it stays on the NFA, then you're still going to be pursuant to the provisions. Now, a lot of people don't want to talk about this. They just say, well, you wait a long time and that's it. No, there's more to it than that. That permission slip's kind of a big deal. I have a friend that I've traveled with several times and met up with him, across state lines. We live in different states. He lives in Indiana. I live in Michigan. We were both going to South Carolina and then Georgia, respectively. He wanted to bring a good number of machine guns with him. And some he was able to bring because of the way they were registered. Because, again, there's this whole, they can be certain types of, some are registered the old-fashioned way. Some are registered as, post-dealer samples. And, look, it gets really confusing. More than I can even keep up with sometimes. But the way it worked is some of his machine guns, he had to get a permission slip from the government before he could cross state lines with it. Firearms he had already registered pursuant to the NFA he had owned. This is a law-abiding citizen. He's an FFL holder. Okay? And I remember we were talking a couple months in advance, I believe it was, and he's like, man, I'm going to have to, and there's a certain form number, but essentially I'm going to have to fill out my permission slips and see if the ATF will grant me permission to take my own machine guns across state lines. Well, we talked about a couple months later, whatever it was. It was getting closer to the event. We're kind of touching base, looking forward to it. We're going to be roommating together and stuff. And I'm like, something came up. He's like, dude, I still haven't gotten those permission slips back. Now, he said the name of the form, right? But he's like, I haven't gotten the form, whatever, back. And I'm like, oh, geez, let's hope. And then it got down to where we talked 2 days before. And he's like, dude, I didn't get them back, man. I can't. And then he gets to the event and he's like, dude, I would have loved to have brought my X, Y, and Z machine guns. I can't remember which one was which now. He's like, but I couldn't. The permission slips never arrived. Now, that could be a big deal. Some of us might live in Michigan, but we're 15, 20 miles from the Ohio line. I can get to another state and even, quite frankly, another country, but that's besides the point I'm making right now. But I could get to another state way quicker than I could across the next town over in Michigan that I live in. Just think about that. Sometimes some of you live, now I don't live in town, but the town that's next to me, it could take me 30 minutes to get from where I'm at outside of town to the other side of the next nearest town in Michigan. I could just cut through the country and be in another state quicker than I could to get through essentially my own town, right? Many, many people just freely go back and forth every day between states. That's a big deal to cross state lines with an NFA item. And it's a big crime if you don't comply. So when I say the real short act needs to pass, it needs to be removed from the NFA. A $0 tax stamp sounds nice, but keep this in mind too. What about all this braces thing? Right now, Trump administration, they've removed the brace rule. Okay, great. And that is good news, guys. Look, I'll call good news when I call it. Great news. All right. Now, AOC becomes president. Just imagine this. You don't want to think about it, and I don't either, but imagine AOC becomes president, and she puts a brace rule back on, and it's even worse than the Biden one. We could be back into this whole tumultuous situation again. But if they're completely removed from the NFA, period, just gone, it doesn't matter if there's a pistol brace rule. If they say, all right, a brace pistol is now a short barrel rifle. Okay, so what? And this is a hypothetical, obviously, if they were to be removed from the NFA. No legal advice, but think about it. If short barrel rifle and shotgun are removed from the NFA, at that point, it wouldn't matter if it was a brace. It wouldn't matter if it was a stock. So, but here's the difference. If it's a $0 tax stamp, but they stay as an NFA item, see where I'm heading with this? Then we could have a pistol brace rule back again where it's like, now you need to register all your this. You need to register all your that. And here's one more thing that's very, very important to remember. Back to the Heller decision. Scalia basically says in there that NFA items are not covered and protected under the Second Amendment. A rifle, yes. NFA items, no. And if they are covered, it's been argued certainly not to the level of a what's called GCA firearm or Title I firearm. I know this is all complicated, but the GCA regulates firearms. The NFA regulates firearms. You actually can't get rid of the NFA at this point unless you got rid of the GCA first. That's how complicated all of this is, but I digress. So also remember, there's implications, according to the courts, that you get less or in sometimes zero Second Amendment protection of an NFA item versus what's called a Title I firearm. Or just a regular transferable firearm, if you will. No tax stamp required. It's kind of weird. It's all weird. Because the Second Amendment just says shall not be infringed. All right, let me see if there's any questions here. I'll probably jump off in a few minutes. This is good news. It doesn't seem like... Let me see here. Let's see here. Some of this has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. So let's see if there's any questions you guys have. Oh, geez. Drew in Oregon. Call a bowling alley and ask if they have 8-pound balls. And when they say yes, ask them how to walk. Jeez. How do they walk? All right. So, yeah, this is good news right now. I do want to say that. That's what I'm going to end with. Breaking. The Hearing Protection Act is in. It is in the House. Budget reconciliation bill. Probably not in the end, though. Or not the full version, but I hope it will be. Short Act, we're going to have to see what happens. What version of it may or may not be. Allegedly being brought into the Senate. We'll have to see if that happens. And if it does, then we'll furthermore have to see what does it look like. And then, of course, we have to run the Hearing Protection Act that may or may not pass the full House vote, right? We have to still consider that. We have to see what that's going to look like and see if that can make it past the Byrd rule, the Senator Byrd rule. I know. So, yeah, this is far from over, but I do want you all to be encouraged. We have gotten further than we ever have before with this. Like, literally, I can't remember even getting close to this. So that's a good thing. This is good. And gosh, I'm hoping and crossing my fingers that the unabridged version can make it past that Byrd rule into the Senate. That there will be the will and fortitude to stand for the 2A from these Republicans in the Senate, where it'll make it through their committees. It'll make it through it still has to make it through a floor vote, 51% threshold, with J.D. Vance voting in case of a tie. Remember, if it's a 50-50 vote, Vance comes in, presides over the Senate, and casts that vote. I don't necessarily see that happening here because, trust me, with the political pressure Trump's putting on these senators, I think every senator is going to want to make sure they pass this one big, beautiful bill. Very unlikely, but there is a scenario where technically Vance could be the decider. But look, man, it wouldn't hurt to be calling Vice President Vance's office. When I say call Vance, call Trump, you're not going to literally talk to them. You guys know that. But, hey, man, I can see putting some positive peer pressure on Vance. I believe Vance is very influential among his recent colleagues in the Senate. Vance is the president of the Senate. Very recently, he was just a peer serving with these people. He's friends with some of these people. So if you were able to put some positive peer pressure or whatever, I wouldn't completely forget Vance. What's happening, Dale? How you doing? Kurt 24, what's happening, man? Dude, live life. There he is. There he is. Dude, did you watch the full 12 hours last night? Dude, this guy was watching my live stream at the very beginning. I tapped out after like 8.5, 9 hours. Who else did? There had to have been. I see a bunch of you guys that were in there last night. I see Adam. Adam was in there last night. Zanti was in there last. Dude, a bunch of you guys were in there last night. Well, I say last night all the way till like noon today or 1 p.m. today. But I think Live Life was in there the whole entire 12 hours. And maybe somebody else was too. That's crazy. Yeah, the Firearms Owners Protection Act. Alex, like I have said many times, you're right. It was like a Pyrrhic victory. FOPA is the reason we're allowed to travel through all 50 states, including banned states, with your home state legal items. Yes, and if you're new to the channel, welcome, man. It's good to have you here. Obviously, we think alike. I have covered that many times on my Friday night live streams. Exactly what you just said. I'll go into the whole thing, ripping on Reagan and the Firearms Owners Protection Act, and I'm like, hey, look, though, with heavy stipulations, you can travel through with firearms legal owning your state, but you can like stop for gas and maybe like a bite to eat, but you can't stop like too long. Like pretty much the way the courts have worded it, it'd be going too far, they say, if you were to just like, oh, like, I don't know, I'm just traveling through the state, but I'm just going to live there for like a couple months. But then we also had the NYSERPA v. Brewing case, which also came in and weighed on that. But yeah, it's before the Firearm Owners Protection Act, you couldn't even travel like as far as like transporting firearms through states where they weren't legal. Now, keep in mind, I'm not giving you guys legal advice yet again. This is transporting. You still can't concealed carry with, I'm going to make this up, a Michigan CPL. You're not going to be able to just drive through New York with that right now. So that's a totally different topic. Loaded and carried as such, right? Dude, the original version of the Cloud Amendment that we were reading from last night that was current as of that time at like 4 or 5 in the morning, whatever it was, said that it was going to remove silencers, because that's the legal word, right? Well, it said suppressors in the summary, but we are essentially talking silencers on a matter of legality words, legal semantics. But it said it was going to remove silencers from the NFA and the GCA and treat them as just accessories. That is what was originally there. So keep in mind when we say we got the full Hearing Protection Act, I think already we've had to take a little bit of a compromise, to be fair. Because what I'm seeing being reported right this minute doesn't look quite identical to the one that I saw last night, but I could be wrong on that. But I think I don't see now where it's being reported all of a sudden today that they'd be relegated to mere accessories. I think they still would have to be transferred as a firearm on a Form 4473, which now that tells me that they're still going to be regulated pursuant to the GCA, Gun Control Act of 1968. But I agree with you. They should literally just be an accessory. And here's the crazy part. Under existing law, and this is like, they say all parts of a silencer are indeed a silencer. So if you have a silencer that takes what's called little wipes, they're little rubber pieces that helps, with the initial rapport. So you shoot through the wipe first is the idea to silence or quiet down that first shot, and then each subsequent shot will be a little quieter. Some people use like cable lube gel that you use, like Ideal makes it to like pull cables through raceways or conduit. They'll put that in there. Some people will put water, something just to muffle that first crack. Because if you've ever shot, and look, you guys are probably experts on silencers more than me. I don't do tax stamps. I don't own any, but I've been around them and understand them a little bit. So just be patient with me. I understand a little bit. There might be some that don't work this way, but generally speaking, there's that first shot crack, and then it actually gets subsequently quieter. Well, some of them, and a lot of times it's on more old school designs, or some of them, they still just use a wipe, like the little pill bottle 22 that GSL makes. It's literally the size of a little pill fob. Teeny, and it's for 22 LR. So sometimes you can use a wipe, it's called. It's just a piece of rubber that the bullet has to puncture through for that first shot, and that'll help quiet down the first shot in some cases before it can pressurize or build up volume in that can, right? And then subsequently quieter. In some cases, it's so small, it basically, like, you get one shot with the wipe and it's quiet, and then the next shot immediately gets louder. But here's the point I'm getting at. Just that little wipe, that piece of rubber, it should cost a nickel. Problem is you have to take it in, and again, no legal advice, but have it done like under some type of warranty provision from your SOT or your class 3, whatever you want to call it, dealer. Because if you possess just that wipe, just in and of itself, that alone is considered a silencer. If your silencer has baffles in it that you can take in and out, just possessing parts of a silencer. If you just possessed a baffle, just a random silencer baffle, they could bust you on an unregistered silencer, assuming you procured said baffle without actually having it registered, right? But it's crazy, man. And I know this because I was talking to a silencer manufacturer, and they're like, well, yeah, you'd have to bring it in to like get the wipe put in from us. I'm like, but that piece of rubber? And it's like, well, yeah, any part of a silencer is considered a silencer in and of itself. That's how it stands right now. And yes, wipes won't be an issue with the Hearing Protection Act. I agree. But here's the kicker. JJ McKay. What if they bring the tax down to $0 though? Hold on. Them wipes are still an issue, aren't they? Because technically you'd still have to fill out a form. What form would you have to fill out? Would you be making a silencer, or would you be transferring a silencer? I don't know how that would even work, but would you have to fill out the form still and go through the fingerprinting, all of the mambo jamambo, notifying your Leo? They would get notified and all this. Would you have to go through everything just to get a wipe? If they just take the tax down to 0, right? No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. Hold on. I understand if they're removed from the NFA, it's not an issue, okay? I didn't say it. Imagine a scenario, which I think is the most probable scenario. That's why I'm saying imagine it, because it could come into play here. So hold on, guys. And anyone can answer me. If they stay on the NFA and you still have to get a tax stamp, but it's $0 tax stamp, what would be the issue with that wipe then? Wouldn't you still have to go through and fingerprint? And I know there's kiosks and photo and do all this stuff that you can do real quickly. But I think we would. You would have to go through all that for that little piece of rubber every time, even if you pay them $0. I believe so. And don't think for a minute, guys, I support the NFA. I'm just telling you, like, if that's the case. Now, look, people do whatever they want to do. But if you're going to be in compliance with the laws, my question, what would you have to do? What if you want to go buy a 24-pack of oil filters and, I don't know, a 3/4 or a 1/2 inch pipe thread to 1/2 by 28 thread adapter, if you know what I mean, with a bunch of big boxes of oil filters. If they keep it on the NFA with $0, I believe you'd have to apply for a tax stamp for each and every single oil filter and for the actual adapter itself, right? Now, would it be free? Sure, but you'd have to go through the rigmarole. Now, here's what I don't get. That would be you making your own, so you'd be stuck with doing that yourself. Maybe some of you guys know the answer to this, but I don't think there's anywhere you can go just on a kiosk for making your own. I think that's more arduous if you're making an NFA item. And I think you have to sit back and still wait a very long time when you make rather than transfer. Oh, come on, man. You can't be that first order of a thinker. It's like you guys asked the question. If you didn't have breakfast today, how would that make you feel? It's just a question. Like, if you didn't have breakfast today, how would you feel? Some people will look and say, well, I did have breakfast today. No, that wasn't the question. If you didn't have breakfast today, how would it make you feel? Well, hungry, I guess. Dude, I know you're just messing with me, man. You're messing with me at this point. You have to be. Like, I get it. Because I've said like 10 times, I'm like, if the taxes were moved down to $0, right? But it's still pursuant to the NFA, I guess we'd have to literally go through everything, right? For a new oil filter, for a new wipe, for a new baffle, for a whatever. I don't know. Dude, you guys know what'll happen. And this is why there's allegedly, okay? Allegedly, there are insiders in the gun industry, in the silencer industry, trying to lobby to not get these off the NFA, because here's what'll happen. I'll tell you guys right now what'll happen. Solvent traps from Wish and Temu will come flooding in the country so fast you won't even think about it. And you'll literally have like a completely built silencer without the hole drilled in the very end, aka solvent trap. And people will be buying $10, $20 solvent traps. Yeah, they might be $30 to $40 at first because the initial rush. Trust me, give it a year or two. You'll be buying a $10 baffled, and it'll probably quiet down your firearm very well. Dude, you'll be getting solvent traps for $10, but the only difference is they would just have a hole in the end of them as well. That's if it was removed from the NFA and the GCA and was literally an accessory. Now, I don't think that version has been inserted in the bill. We saw it in the wee hours of the morning last night, but I don't see that now. I think it's going to remove it from the NFA only, not the GCA. See what I'm saying? So if it's the GCA, then it would still be considered presumably a Title I firearm. You'd have to do a 4473, you know. But no, man, I'm hoping it gets completely removed from the NFA. I do. I just think probably the Senate's going to try to throw a wrench in the old spokes. I mean, I can see where the old school mag lights will make a big comeback, if you know what I mean. People will be buying up all the old mag lights that take the big D-cell batteries off of eBay. There's lots of stuff that could happen. I also saw the whole state law preemption. Yeah, that was in the one last night too that I don't see in there anymore as much. We'll have to see. This is far from over. That's right. The version I was reading in the middle of the night last night of the HPA said no states could tax, et cetera, either. I don't know if it's being reported that that's still in there. We'll have to see about that one. I think for sure that removing them from the GCA would have been a bridge too far no matter what for the Byrd Act. I really do. Again, that's not what I want it to be. I'm just saying, I think no matter what, the Byrd rule, not Byrd Act, the Byrd parliamentarian rule, the Senate rule, the Byrd rule would have swatted this down in 2 seconds flat if it would have kept removing it from the GCA and all that as well. I still think it's probably going to get slapped down by the bird rule as it is, but now I'm saying probably instead of no matter what, right? Somebody had another question I wanted to look at here. Grand Life AJ says 2A EDU. Have you seen anyone who carries AB suppressors locally? Man, I'm not familiar with that brand, dude. I know a lot about guns, and I have, a lot of experience. Silencers is really nothing I've ever gone into. I wish I could help you more. You guys can really make fun of me now. Because, look, when I know what's going on, I assert myself on here. But, man, I got to be humble right now. I don't even know what AB suppressors are. You guys can make fun of me like crazy, okay? I'm just not very well versed in them. But I wish I could help you, dude. I know who GSL is because they're in Jackson, Michigan, and I actually literally toured their factory. Gosh, I know GSL. Gosh, there must be more brands than that. Look, all I know is silencers need to be removed from the NFA, removed from the GCA. I know that based on my stance for the Second Amendment. Dude, like, I'm confessing to you guys right now. Like, everyone has a weakness. I know nothing about these brands. I really don't. I've gone to quite a few industry events, and I've actually shot them before, and I've shot different brands, and I can't even really remember what they were. Is that bad? So if you guys can help him out, man. Locally, I'm in southeastern Michigan, for example. Can someone help him out? Look, I'll tell you this: Supermatch Shooting Sports does sell silencers. I will tell you that for sure. A friend of mine, Mackenzie, owns it. Great shop. I don't know what brand they sell though. Okay, so call Supermatch if you're in southeastern Michigan there, right? Metro Detroit. There you go, man. You call Supermatch out of Newport, all right? Call Mackenzie. Tell him you're friends with 2A EDU. He's a friend of mine, and ask him. I'm sure he can order it for you. Yeah, call Supermatch in Newport, Michigan. Say, man, I'm friends with 2A EDU. And trust me, I'm not in any kind of kickback thing from him, nothing like that. It's just kind of cool sometimes to tell someone, hey, man, I'm a friend of a friend, right? But yeah, Supermatch Shooting Sports. Dude, if they're removed from the NFA, I'll start to educate myself a bit, right? Dude, Angry American Vet, I hope they're going to be off the NFA. Man, hey, we took the first step. They're off the NFA according to the House Manager's Amendment right now. But here's the thing. They have to go through the Senate. It has to go through the Senate. Well, let me back up. It has to be voted on by the House floor, then the Senate, through its committees, through its bird rule. Major step forward today, guys. Major step forward. Dude, and I am being happy about this. Like, I am. I'm really trying to be happy. I'm sending positive vibes. I'm praying for the Second Amendment. I don't pray for material items. That's not my relationship with God. I'm not praying for the silencers themselves, but I am praying for freedom and liberty. I've been praying about this topic. I'm trying to have positive thoughts about this topic. So, yeah. I'm definitely... And then, man, for you 3D printer nerds out there, dude, wow. Just think of all the stuff you guys can do. I say you all because I never got into 3D printers. I just don't have the time to learn all this stuff. Yeah, I do. I do. I am prayerful about my God-given natural rights. Absolutely. Like, not that it's germane to this stream, but I'll just throw it out there real quick if you guys want a little insight on how I think. I don't say, God, please, I pray that I get a silencer tomorrow. Like, I pray that I'll, win the lotto. I don't pray for material things. That's just my personal walk with God. But I do pray for freedom and liberty. Absolutely. And I pray for good people to not get oppressed by a tyrannical government. Absolutely. So don't forget that, guys. Call call, but don't forget to pray if you're a prayerful person. I'm being serious. You know, some of you are Christians, some of you aren't. Some of you pray. I don't know how you all pray, but you know what it is. If you do it, you do it. And if you do pray, I would pray about this because there's a lot of freedom on the line, and this is a battle of good versus evil. That's what this is. That's essentially all this ever is, really. Lori DeVries, word of mouth is how I like to find business I need of. Heck yeah. Dude, I like barely, guys. I pay like $20 a month to advertise just in the digital version of the yellow pages nowadays. 99.9% of all my business with my small landscaping, lawn service business, power washing. I do a lot of stuff, but you know, it's just word of mouth. Repeat customers, neighbor, friend, family member of a happy customer. That's how I get all my business. Yeah. What's up, Randy Smith? Yeah, keep calling, guys. Y'all can make fun of me if you want, but pray about the situation too. That's important. Some of you pray to God in Jesus' name. Some of you don't. Some of you might be Muslim, Hindu. I don't know what you all are, but these are certain unalienable rights endowed by your creator. And I think that's the problem with this country for too long. We wonder why we're losing the exercise of our rights, and not many people look at themselves as servants of their creator, you know? I don't think it's a coincidence either that the more people just want to go secular on anything, the more we keep losing. Really. Battle Bean 762, man, this would be so amazing. This is the closest we've come in any of our lives of this. It really is. It's a big deal. Dude, like, this channel's literally streamed 14 out of the last, 30 hours on this topic. I'm going to jump off in just a little bit here. No, not. I just did the math backwards. See, I'm still tired. No, we've streamed, 14 hours out of the last, let's see, 22 and a half hours. Yeah. I don't want my ego to get inserted in this at all, but I'm highly emotionally involved in this. Gosh, I hope that Senate. Dude, I'm being biased, guys, because we've gotten screwed our whole lives. Every time something comes to something, it's we have to take a little bit of a whatever. Now we've had some big wins too. Man, I hope that parliamentarian doesn't say this violates the bird rule. I really, really hope. Man. Yeah, this is the closest we've been, and the closest we could come in a long time. An opportunity like this might only happen once every 100 years. So don't mistake anything I've said all night to you guys as being optimistic. I am not being a pessimist. The hearing protection is in, but I'm going to say probably not all the way through the Senate, not clean cut, but I hope so. I really do. Z-Man, everyone keeps saying that, and I hope you're right. Everyone says it's a tax issue, not policy. Should not be a real problem. The tax is a tax issue. The tax is a tax issue, right? So, what they might say is, yeah, reducing the tax from $200 down to zero, that's a tax issue. However, the removing of the regulations pursuant to the registry and all the other provisions, you know what I mean? All the other provisions are not relevant under reconciliation. And I'm gonna leave you with this, because dude, it's not about me having like negative vibes. I have like positive vibes. It's just, oh really? The NFA was a tax law? Do tell. Well, welcome to the channel. I can tell you're new here, and it's good to see you here tonight. I hope you've enjoyed. If I had $1 for every time I've talked about that the NFA is a tax law, I have a lot of money. Maybe. He says, here's a way to defend removal as a budget issue. If the tax is zero but still requires registration, that costs money. I agree, but here's the thing. It doesn't cost money per se to vote, but it still costs money to go register to vote. So based on other standards that have been upheld in the past, I don't know. I don't know how that would work out. Yeah, we read the language on this channel tonight. Literally tonight, man. We've literally read the language tonight. Is there seriously some other YouTuber? Where's all this coming from? And it's not you, man. I'm not picking on you at all. Just a lot of people tonight. Is there some other YouTuber out there like saying like, dude, this passed, we got it. Like the Hearing Protection Act is now law? Because a lot of this stuff I'm reading tonight seems like much of the community is kind of confused. Like, this is on the House. This is on the House, one big beautiful bill. Right? The United States government has 3 branches of government in the Constitution. I would argue there's a 4th branch that's unequal and unchecked by any of them. That's called the deep state. That's called the bureaucrats. Probably the most powerful. But I digress. Back to the Constitution, we have 3 branches of government. We have an executive branch that is led by the President of the United States. We have a judicial branch. And the court that's prescribed to be supreme in the Constitution is the Supreme Court. The inferior courts, these lower inferior district judges, were actually put in by legislation, not the Constitution. That brings me to the 3rd branch of government. That's the lawmaking body. It's called the United States Congress. And contrary to popular belief, I hear these videos every day by people that are like infinitely smarter than me, obviously, because they have more subscribers or whatever. But they say, well, this has to pass the Congress and then it has to pass the Senate. To even word something like that, though, would tell me that that person, and most people actually, don't even actually understand how the government works at all. And they've never read the Constitution. Because that's like saying a hot water heater. It's redundant. You wouldn't say it has to pass the Congress and then also the Senate if people even knew what the Congress is. The Congress has 2 chambers. The lower chamber is the House of Representatives, otherwise known as the People's House. It consists of 435 members that run on 2-year terms. The upper chamber is the United States Senate, which consists of 100 senators, 2 per state, that serve 6-year terms, with the vice president presiding over the Senate in an event of a tie. Okay. How does a bill become a law? Well, many bills can be originated in the Senate or in the House. But the Constitution is very specific, though, when it comes to this type of bill we're looking at right now. A budget bill, a reconciliation bill must originate in the House. That's where we've heard this saying, or at least I have. And I don't care if anyone else has heard this. It's just the way it is, whether any other YouTuber likes it or not. I'm just telling you guys the truth here. Okay? The House holds the power of the purse. The budget bills originate in the House, which is the lower chamber of the United States Congress. Then it could go back to the Senate. If there's stuff that needs to be hashed out, parts of it or in theory, all of it, I suppose, could be sent back to the House. You could also have the debates between the two solved through a reconciliation process. However, at the end of the day, it is impossible that anybody could possibly know what the final version of the Hearing Protection Act is when, unless it's happened while I've been live tonight, it has not actually passed the House yet. And since it's not even been officially taken up in the Senate yet, it is literally impossible that it's been taken up through the Senate. So while my optimism is as optimistic as anybody's that this passes unadulterated, that it's not going to be bastardized, I'm going to stay firm here because I try to give out accurate information on this channel. It is impossible, no matter who said that we got this and it's all the way through. Okay. We got this and so this. It passed the Congress. Now it just needs to go to the Senate. That's literally physically impossible right now. That's all I'm saying. We did get it through, introduced. It's passed the Rules Committee, if you will. It is now an official amendment to the One Big Beautiful Bill. That is a huge victory, 100%. And I don't know, like, I think this is possible, right? Like, in my mind, I know it's possible. It's possible for me to say, yes, this is awesome, because this is exactly what we wanted to happen today. The actual Hearing Protection Act that's going to repeal from the NFA. Yeah, dude, that's going to be in the main House package, or is in the main House package. But I can't say, and I won't say, because I don't want to lie to you. That's the only reason. I won't say this is a done deal and it's all the way through, because it's provably not. And I'll leave you with one last clue here. Gun Owners of America put out a post that was breaking right around the time I started this stream. The manager's amendment to the One Big Beautiful Bill includes the Hearing Protection Act, fully removing suppressors from the National Firearms Act of 1934. And that's awesome. Dude, that happened. That's like, this is still, I'm going to say this one more time, the closest we've come to this in any of our lives. Now, maybe some of you were technically born, around or before 1934. Shout out to you, by the way, if you're that old. That's awesome, man. But nobody watching right now was like 21, or even likely 18 in 1934. Probably not possible, right? So I think it's fair to say in all of our lifetimes. But then here's the thing. Nobody wants to read this next part. And I don't like it either. I don't want to read it, but here's what the next part says. As a backup under the Byrd rule, the transfer and making tax is also reduced from 200 to 0. As a backup, see? That's if the Byrd rule strikes the one part, at least the tax part. You guys understand, right? If they weren't worried about this is crystal clear. If they weren't worried about the Byrd rule at all, and when I say they, I mean the House managers. You could say the House, right? If nobody in the House was worried about this, they wouldn't need to add in a separate part of the amendment reducing the tax from 200 to 0, because if they knew 100% that it was going to pass all the way through the Senate, you guys follow me? That it was going to completely repeal the NFA. If it's repealed, it's not taking the tax down to 0, it's getting rid of the tax. And there is a difference. There is a difference between having to fill out paperwork and have a $0 tax versus just repealing it outright. There's a stark difference, trust me. So if they were sure, no matter what, that they're repealing it from the NFA, completely removing them, if they were 100% sure that wasn't going to snag, why would they possibly put in a backup that in the alternative would make the transfer from $200 down to 0? I don't like reading that other part. I don't like it at all. And I know, like, most of my viewers right now probably giving me thumbs downs because you guys don't like me saying it either. And I don't like that it's there, but I'm just telling you it is there. That tells me, due to context clues and the fact that this ain't my first rodeo. It's born at night, but not last night. That means there's a chance. I'm not saying 100%. Being very specific. There's a chance. And although probably somewhat vague, probably should not be conflated with no matter what. I'm saying probably the Senate, whether via the parliamentarian or committees or whatever, going to probably tone it down some. And I think the House managers knew that, and that's why they put in a backup. If you want to read exactly what I'm citing here, you can go to my X, and I retweeted or re-X'd, whatever you want to call it, reposted the GOA's thing, and you can read it right for yourself. And if you did like the stream tonight, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, because I am very, very happy about what happened today. I really am. And hey, let's see, man. First step, great step. You can take a first great step, and your second step can also be great, and I hope it is. You could also fall into a little snake hole and twist your ankle on your second step. Hope that doesn't happen. I truly, truly do. So yeah, good to see all of you tonight. I am going to jump off. Yep, the Shush Act had bird rule issues. Trust me, man, the whole thing was, yeah, lots to it. It's really complicated. The Constitution literally says, shall not be infringed. And now we have to the fact that we should have to mention a bird rule when it comes to a natural God-given right. Yeah. What's up, CNT Designs and Arms? Is the debate going on right now? Well, I'm not going to stream that debate because that will also go on for 12 hours. And yeah, I probably need to get my sleep schedule turned around, because I kind of got lucky and pulled an all-nighter last night, and I couldn't have cut grass today anyways because it was raining. So I did get lucky there. But tomorrow I need to catch up on some lawns because the rain is growing the grass. Harry Grimley, what's happening, man? Nice to see you. Rosie A, how you doing? Yes, Too Tall's Ale says, get some rest. The rain is growing that grass. Dude, I know. I have a customer that's like, wants their grass cut every 2 weeks, you know? Oh, man. I was literally, the grass had bolted. You guys know what I mean? Bolted, meaning sprouted seeds, gone to seeds, another way to word it. Dude, it was like there was the seeds. It was that tall. I mean, it was like a foot tall. And I'm sitting there, 35 horsepower on my Skag Turf Tiger. And, dude, I had to go half speed and still double cut it. So you are right on that. Grass is growing like crazy. All right, yep. The Hearing Protection Act, to include, has passed the House. Well, the committee, okay? The vote of the whole House, I don't know that that's happened yet. I doubt they've debated it that quickly, but we will see, because I have been predisposed for 2 hours here tonight, and we'll see what happens with it in the Senate. Call about it, pray about it, do whatever you guys do about it, and we'll see what happens. Oh, yeah, the city will give you the notice, Dale, if it gets too tall. But, yeah, you guys can literally read the amendment for yourself. If you go to 2A-EDU over on X, I reposted that a couple hours ago. Or rewind to the beginning if you want to hear more of what happened. In the meantime, I will see you guys all again on here soon, most likely on Friday, unless something else crazy happens. And thank you, Jeremy Wills. I appreciate it, and good to see all of you again. All right, thanks for watching, and have a good one.